Hey, welcome to Real Talk, episode 142. I'm Todd, this is AJ, and we're back.
November 16th, 2021. Where were you?
I'm here with you. And behind the camera, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Fun Turn Clint. Welcome, Fun Turn.
Hello, hello.
Once again, thank you. Saturday night. It always reminds me of like a late night radio host.
That's right, man.
If you're new to the show, then let me explain what we're about. We don't know. I'm just kidding. We're about life. This is an opportunity, a platform, podcast, video show, whatever you want to call it, webinar. Based on where we discuss life, God, the Bible, and everything in between. Somewhere in the description of this podcast or video or wherever you're watching / listening, you will see a link. The link is www.theremnant.life/real-talk. The real in that is REAL. So www.theremnant.life/real-talk. Click the link, go down to submit a question, hit the box, form fillable box, tippity tap your question, comment, concern, article, whatever it may be. Hit send, and it goes into our database. What? Completely anonymously. Could not find you if we tried.
That's right. You are completely protected.
From us finding you, yeah. Sound like you're threatening. So, I'd like to point out that we look very official today. As you'll notice, we have our show notes.
Yeah.
Those listening, we're really deciding after 3-4 years of the show to become more professional. So, we still haven't researched. We like to keep we want to keep it organic and like it's a real conversation. Yeah. So, yeah, we look up verses sometimes of the questions, but we don't discuss the questions ahead of time. Really we just bring it to you. Because otherwise it's not real talk.
No, it's not. It's scripted.
Yep, and you'll learn very quickly that we're not scripted in the least.
No, not at all.
So, as you can look, AJ, if you'll see on our show notes here,
yeah,
we've done part 1, and we'll move into part 2. So, would you like to catch everyone up just briefly on your life?
Yeah.
How you doing?
Well,
let me pause real quick. Sorry, I'm terrible.
Oh,
I do want to hype something up. Guys, we got a heck of a show today.
Yeah, I'm excited.
And I mean that. So, part of the reason we're moving to show notes, I'm sorry, this is going to sound out of nowhere, but this is important. I want to hype this up.
Yeah.
Not only do you get to hear these guys' lives, which that alone is pretty awesome.
It's interesting.
We got some incredible questions. We have some real news, real views that, in my opinion, might be one of the best as far as, boy, I don't even know how to say it. Polarizing?
Nice. Good word.
We do love to polarize.
Oh, we polarize just by our very being. So anyway, stick around, enjoy the show, but I mean it. Sometimes I'm sure it becomes monotonous, but listen, I know you listen to your other little podcast, probably about, how to bake a cake or something.
Bake a cake.
So stick around, because this is half as interesting as that at least. All right, AJ, my apologies. Please tell us again how you're doing.
So, I guess I'll try to keep it as short as possible because I know if I were to kind of like really dive in, it'd probably take up forever. So I'll try to keep it as short as possible. Don't even know where to start. That's what's hard about it.
I'm just stretching.
Definitely going through a hard time. Just with life, I know I've had to really ask myself a lot of questions, and I've had you guys really dig into me really deep, which has just been it has been a blessing. And I don't know, man, I'm facing a lot of challenges in my life right now that are, I guess I could say overall are kind of just reoccurring themes of like, man, like, I don't like to take responsibility for things. Like I don't, I'm selfish and I have a lot of arrogance in me, and like I've realized that a lot of the time in my life, man, I like to kind of view life from just my own self in a way of like I don't like to take the weight of how I make others feel sometimes, and like I don't because to me it's easier that way. Like when I can just think of myself and like how I mess up life, I'm like, oh, like that's just AJ, that's just me. I can handle that quote. But then when I start thinking about how that affects others and like what that does to them, that's when it becomes very surreal because I think a lot of my life, man, I haven't really taken the responsibility of my own actions. I don't think I've really done that. And I'm currently in a place right now where I feel like I don't really have much of an option besides having to feel that the weight of those actions that I've done. And so I'm trying to be in a place of humility. Uh, it's one thing that I feel like I've always had a hard time doing, even now, is I don't. I feel like I'm not very good at balancing between being humble, but also like being hopeful, humble and hopeful. I think a lot of the time, humility to me, and maybe this is just because my view of it is kind of skewed because I don't like myself, but like humility a lot of the time is just kind of beating yourself up, which is not like there's no progress made. And like I guess like
good.
I can see that now, but in the moments I tend to not go there. I tend to just either I beat myself up and sit there, and that's kind of what the moments I'm starting to realize those are the times when I am making it about me and not the weight and hurt that I made others feel. And so it's like how do I guess the question I'm asking is like, how do I get past that? How do I, in those moments when I am feeling the weight of the decisions I've made and the consequences, it's like, how do I get past just looking at it from the view of me and seeing the weight of others? And how do I tangibly and actually change things in my life to make it to where those don't happen, And that is kind of where I'm at, I guess, to keep it short. Like, I don't know, man. So it's been hard, and I've been trying to, I just been really trying to fight for joy, even though I feel like I'm not fighting very hard. I know that I can fight harder, but I guess I shouldn't say I've been trying. I should say I need to fight for joy, because a lot of the time I can feel myself just kind of sink into that, and then I just kind of sit, and that's not helping anything. So
Why don't you like yourself? So there's like you are looking at you. What don't you like about that guy?
it's like it's almost like I don't recognize him. It's like I don't even know who you
So
are.
why does that make you not like him?
Because then I don't recognize him in any sense of there's nothing. Like there's not even anything good.
Okay, but you're not answering my question. So I get that, but okay,
Yeah.
so why don't you like that guy? There's nothing good. What do you mean? Okay, so what's bad? He's standing right there. Who is this guy? Why don't you like him?
He doesn't stand for anything. He doesn't
if
really.
he did, what would he be doing differently?
If he did,
Yeah. How do you know he doesn't stand for anything?
he doesn't think about it. He doesn't really take action. Or if he does, it's not.
Take action and what though? So you don't like do a weekly show about God,
I do.
or he doesn't, I guess.
Yeah, I mean he does, but he doesn't. It's kind of what it feels like.
Well, we're not talking about whether or not he does it well, right? We're first off just talking about. I'm not saying you don't, but I mean, let's be real. I'm not mocking you. Let's think about this guy as a person. Mm-hmm. So you said he doesn't stand up for anything. Is that true?
It's what it feels like.
So if somebody came up and said, "Hey, dude, Christ is scum and isn't real and it's pathetic," you just sit there? Or would you say, "No, that's not true, man"?
I think I'd probably say it's not true.
Okay, so then there's certain things he does stand up for. He just
Yeah.
doesn't stand up as often as you'd like.
That's probably better.
Okay.
Better ways. To
All
look
right. What
at
else?
It. He doesn't really seem to care about anything. That's what it feels like. He just kind of settles in for mediocrity. Doesn't like the idea of greatness because it's too much.
So why does that make you not like him?
Because he's accepted where he's at, even though
And that makes you frustrated?
even though knowing it's not where
He wants to be here.
even knowing that's not where he wants to be, but that there's more to life. Like there's more to what you're doing. It's like he has the awareness. It's like he has this general awareness that there's more, but he doesn't want to go to it.
Why does that make him unlikable to you?
Because I don't know, man. It's just so like it feels weak. It's weak.
And that makes you mad that he's weak?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let me stop you real quick. Just point this out. So you're mad at these qualities. So what does that tell us about that? Are you actually those things? If you were, why would it make you mad? Like if your heart was all those things, why would it make you mad?
Because then I
Because you
think
wouldn't have a recognition. You wouldn't even have a standard. Does this make sense? You have a standard in your head that you are not meeting, but you're hating yourself for that as though you don't have the desire to do it. Maybe it's not strong enough.
yeah, I think maybe that's part of it too. Is what you just said, like the desire to it's not strong, and it's like know.
I'm sorry.
It's like I know. That makes sense, like the whole standard thing, because then I wouldn't have one if I didn't.
How many other people that have those traits do you hate in the world? Like you meet a guy and he's weak, do you automatically hate him?
No.
What do you think? I mean, you might get mad at him, right? But beyond that,
Yeah.
what do you feel towards him?
Sad.
Okay, but you hate yourself.
Yeah.
So the grace that you offer others, you don't get that from yourself.
Yeah, I think it's because I realize that I have been given a very good opportunity, and I've been given a very good environment, and I'm just kind of like, kind of thrown it away.
I guess what I'm trying to say, man, is sometimes, do you think it's easier to hate yourself because and I don't know, this is a question. I'm trying to get better at like my tone, all right? I've been sharing that with you guys, but I'll share that with the old pod squad here,
Pod
the
squad?
Book Nook or whatever, Rumble Jumble, all you folks listening, watching. But do you think it's easier to just accept that this is who you are, or to accept that you're not putting the effort to be something?
Oh, it's much easier just to accept that's who you are.
But isn't that what you're doing though? Like you're just hating yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you hate yourself, then you still don't have to move. You just get to sit and hate yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, because it's
like, this is going to sound weird. How can you hate that guy, right? When you were the one who's hating him is also the one that could help him.
Yeah, it's odd.
I'm not mocking him. We all do it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sitting here. It's a pot calling the kettle black. I hate myself too many times. But that doesn't mean that I can't see sometimes the irrational, you know? Like, I'm not even irrational, because that means like it's negative. Like, hey, that's a lie that you're living out of.
Yeah, that's.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I think the difference, like even like using yourself, like saying like, yeah, like I have a lot of parts of me I don't like either. Like,
No, I hate him. I said the same thing.
you're right. You said that. You said you hate him too. Is like I guess the difference is that you seem to have that, like that. There's something in you that gets you past it. You know what I'm saying?
Past it in what way?
Like you're able to go, okay, that's a lie, and then you can go, okay, so that now that I recognize that's a lie.
How does that show itself? I guess that you're saying, hey, you move past it. What is the evidence of that?
Just the things you've done in life, man. Like you've done a lot of crazy stuff because you've been willing to look past those lies.
Like what? Beyond like, okay. So like, what's a couple of the things? The reason is I'm trying to understand your mind.
Like I
It's
feel
not about tooting my horn here, but like when you say that, just like what's two maybe simple things?
I feel like there's like two. Okay, so like two things would be like we were literally just talking about like your back, for example. Like that's a big one. Like you could have easily just accepted those.
True. Like accept that as like that's a fact. I'm never gonna walk or play.
Yeah,
sports
exactly. Yeah, you could have just accepted that, but you didn't.
What does that have? Real quick. Okay, what's the second one? Sorry, and then I'll tell you.
Or even like you like starting, being a part like starting the church, like.
Yeah, that's so the one about the first one, right?
Yeah.
How does that have anything to do like with self-hatred? My willingness to push past that.
Because I'd imagine there's probably many times where you probably hated the fact that you couldn't move.
I did hate that, but what does that have to do with hating me?
Did it ever make you feel like weak? Like,
Sure.
so like, did you hate that?
Sure. But why is that me? See, I viewed that as something out that something that was, excuse me, trying to defeat me. And so then I tried to push through it, you know. And of course, I had those moments. I think we all do, and I don't mean to imply that like it's that easy. Just don't.
Right.
But let's go to the second one, the church thing, dude. I didn't do that. Like that's something I want to talk about, man. It's like the only way I can overcome that, and I do that daily. You weekly at least. You know my like when I preach or whatever, how I have to like how I pray and how hard it is. It's faith, man. It's putting God above myself. I think. And I'm not just saying that. See, I think sometimes I say that and you or the guys or like someone out there is going, oh, that's what you vote. No, man. Like, I'll be honest with you. You know that. When it comes to that, many, many times, I mean, from the moment, dude, and I walk right past you, the streaming table, up to the front. In that, I'm not even exaggerating. Almost every time to the minute that I'm doing that, I'm thinking you shouldn't do this. You were scum. You have no right to say things to people like that. I hear that inner voice. But... and maybe that's true. Maybe those things are true. And this is something I think you've got to like really wrestle with sometimes is even if it's true that all these things are about you, God said move. So, and we've talked before, but really internalize this for a minute. So I try to walk even though I don't feel worthy and I don't like myself. Even if I hate myself, I at least want to be obedient, like in certain moments. So, you know, when you let your self-hatred stop you from doing things that you feel like you want to do and you feel like God's called you to do, you are setting yourself above him.
Yeah.
You really are, right? I mean, I'm not just being corny. Like, I'm being serious. Does that make sense? Because I don't want to make this seem like flippant.
No, that does make sense. And it makes sense, like, in the fact that I know one of my biggest flaws is like that idea of putting myself above God, because I think a lot of the time, like, I do have like that pride and like that stubborn and arrogance in me of like, don't tell me what to do, like, because growing up, like, you know, I was never told what to do, and if they did, it never held true. So why listen, you know? So it's like
that's a different topic. I mean, that's a different issue, man. You know, like, what do you do with that?
Well,
I mean, I don't know. That might be a topic for a different time.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Something to think about, man. Is like, what do you do with that?
I think those are maybe those kind of tie in together, maybe in a way, or like.
I mean, that's a pretty big deal. Like, don't tell me what to do, right?
Right.
So, no wonder.
Yeah. So like,
then you're just like, I'll just do what I want, but yet you hate what you want isn't leading you where you want to be.
Yeah, it's a weird like.
So you're almost mad that I can't do what I want and get to where I want to be.
Yeah, it's very weird. It's like
I mean, it's human, but
yeah, it's a good way to put it. But like, I think there's a part of me that's just like, man, like, it kind of feels like there's two sides of me, which would make sense, I guess. Is like there's that part of me that just wants to settle into like what I feel like I am, and then the other side of me is going, no, you got to push past and be who you really are, and that's kind of what I'm feeling. Which, well, I guess I've kind of always felt that, but it's more prominent now just because of the circumstances.
it boils down to that simple question, man. Sometimes I think for you, not for everyone's issues, and we all go through these moments. Is do you want to be healed? You know, Jesus came to the man who couldn't walk beside the pool. If you don't know the story in the Bible, there's a guy standing by a pool, and there was sort of this pagan belief that the Jews had sort of adopted, or some of them, that, you know, when the water would stir, they thought an angel was touching it could heal, and so he just chilled by the pool and didn't even make a move towards it. Not that it would do anything anyway. Probably because maybe deep down he knew it wouldn't. I've considered that too. But he was living in excuses, man. That's what that guy was doing.
Yeah.
And how do I know? Because when Jesus came to him, the first thing Jesus says to this guy who'd been there like, out of nowhere, apparently Jesus just sees him and walks up and says this: do you want to be healed? Or do you want to be well? And the guy goes, hey, I'm trying, all right? I can't get down here and no one helps me. And he goes, different thoughts, you know, you want to be healed again? Or he just says, get up, take your mat and go home. And he just stands up. Like, at the end of the day, which I love too, because it's Jesus cuts through our excuses. But I think for you, man, is you're laying by the pool and you keep being asked, do you want to be healed? And you would rather lay down, if in this case, that side of it, you'd rather lay there because you're, quote, choosing to, than to obey.
Yeah,
get
that's
up and
really
move.
that's yeah.
Now you say yeah. Everybody that's on the camera, like this is us being very real. But that when does the yeah become? Because I can already tell, dude. I think that's how I get frustrated on a personal relationship. Sometimes you say yeah, and I'm like, you're not actually hearing or agreeing, because I know you. Like, do you actually what do you actually think about that? Beyond just saying, yeah, man, we're on a show, so I need to pretend to agree that that's good.
I see it. Like I see
But you
when
would rather lay there.
sometimes.
I don't know, man. I guess, you know.
Which I think it kind of like goes into like that part of me that's like it's kind of that I think I was kind of talking about briefly before we came on was like that kind of like that hopeless feeling inside of me. Like that's the one that just sometimes is like, yeah, I just rather lay here and let it go, you know. And I think that side tends to come out during times like I guess when circumstances are bad. That's when that part of me tends to come out the most. It feels like.
Yeah. That's tough, man, for real. But I mean, at least you're being honest. This is what do you do about that? But I don't know. Sometimes you gotta move.
Yeah, and that's where it's funny, man, because I can look back too, and this is where it's really hard. And I guess this is probably where I also get mad. Like you were asking me earlier, like why I'm mad at that one. Like you're like, why are you mad at that guy? Because he's had times where he has moved, and he remembers it, and it's like, oh, and look what happened. So it's like having to also like, okay, so you've seen that, then why aren't you want to do it now? Like, I think that's also why I get mad too. At that.
Yeah, but it's just so crazy. It's like getting mad. It's like me getting mad that I don't have a drink of that when I could just take this cup and take a drink of it.
Yeah, it kind of goes.
Because you can't change what's already happened. You can only change what you do moving forward. You just want to sit there and like get mad at yourself for the things that you haven't done up to this point, and then sit in it because you did that, which is very irrational. Versus saying, okay, it's like having a dirty house and then saying, well, because my house is dirty and I let it get here, I'm just going to sit here and look at it. And then it gets dirtier and dirtier. And then you're continually mad instead of just getting up and cleaning it.
That's actually, I'm really, what that just reminded me of is like when I was living in Fort Wayne, like using like the analogy, like my room. Because that's kind of what it was like. Like I remember moments of literally thinking like that, of like, man, this place is disgusting, and then like I would just lay in it.
Yeah, man. I mean, everyone has a choice. I think for you, you're right. God's giving you a lot of cool opportunities and gifts, and you gotta move, man. You gotta if you want to. And this goes for all of us. If you want something different, you have to do something different. Period. Can't wait to want to do it. You can't wait till you feel like doing it. You got to do it. And if there's only one thing at a time you can even focus on, okay, then pick that thing, write it on your arm. You guys know I used to do that around my wrist. Like write something, whatever you need to do, your phone, to remind you to do that one thing differently.
That's really good, man. I think that's great advice because I think, and that's something I struggle with, is like, I think I can tend to like think I have to fix it all in a day, and I think that's another part of the reason why I get overwhelmed.
Yeah, can't do that, man.
Yep. And so,
most of the time, people don't even want the people around you don't even expect that. They just want to see that you care enough to make any movements. That's probably why a lot of divorces happen. You get to the point where it's like, this is so big, there's nothing we can do to fix all this, instead of taking one step at a time. Which could be, who knows? Saying I love you one more time that you wouldn't say it normally. It could just start there. So anyway, it's good stuff, man. I'm praying for you. Keep walking it out. I think it's good, that you're thinking through this stuff.
Yeah. But I know I didn't expect it to run as long as it did, but what about you, man? How are you doing?
I'm all right. My back's hurt again. I hurt my back again really bad. For those that are longtime viewers of the show, I've had a really bad back injury probably 7 years ago, and it flares up, and it's pretty bad right now. Like, started happening Sunday evening. Sunday evening. And, speaking of frustration, I can get frustrated because I'm like, gosh darn it. If I would have kept up on these certain exercises, it probably wouldn't have happened, which it probably wouldn't have. Because the reality is I'm in the position I was told I have to have surgery, and I chose not to do that and just train and constantly rehab. And I don't have leeway to not do that stuff. And sometimes I did, get busy. Life's gotten busy lately, which I hate that because everybody's life's busy. I hate the word busy. But anyway, that's the big thing. Like right now it hurts. Praise God for medicine and praise God for, that some relief that I've gotten periodically. But that's the big thing. My back hurts, and I'm trying to think through, I guess, so you know how I think. Like I know it's going to hurt to do the things I need to do to get my back right. But I can sit here and think about that or do it. So
It's good.
it's not good to do. Fun Turn, you doing all right?
I'm doing pretty good.
Any news on your end you want to discuss?
Nothing too crazy. I guess I'm just thinking about life in general. What do I want to do with it? Weird moments this time of year, because I'm around my family. I get onslaughted a lot with, "You're not doing the right thing in life. You're not doing that. You should be married. You should have a different job. You should work at a factory. You should go da 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 da." So I get onslaughted a lot, and you know me. Eventually, if I get yelled at enough, I start to think about it, and then I look at my life around me and I go,
Start to think about it.
I want to do more. I want to be more. I want to do all this stuff, and I've been really, I guess, not really struggling, but definitely like I'm handling it better than I did last year. I can already tell. Like I'm legitimately thinking about it and also to the point where I'm like, okay, well then thinking gets me nowhere. So what do I want to actually do? And I'm just going back and forth between like 4 or 5 different things and being like, okay, well, we're going to start here. Or we're going to start there. Which one do you want to start at? And then just go from there.
So you're at the stage where you've picked something, or you have not yet? You just know you need to. You don't have to say what it is. I'm just curious what
I've
stage.
picked at least one thing that I want to start doing. However well it will go, we'll
One thing at a
definitely
time,
see.
which is what you said.
And then I've definitely been seriously thinking about working out again, getting back into that role, as well as like playing basketball on Sunday has revitalized some of that. Like, well, I am not hitting shots that I should hit, and that annoys me. So, especially when I've practiced them about 100 times, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, and I'm a bigger guy, so I should be able to be a center, but I am terrible at it. So,
You've gotten a lot better.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, man. One other bit of advice I guess to give big brother. One of the things I try to do too is like you tell people close to you what that one thing you're going to do. And same for you. Not so they can jump you every time, but like once you tell people, your own mind goes, crap, I got to do this now. Like
That's true.
You know what I mean? So something to think about for those out there too. If you want to make a change, is share that goal or that thing with someone so that your mind holds you to it, but they can also be ones to kind of ask you.
That's really good, man. Because then also, if you make it known to people and you end up not doing it, how bad did you really want to do it?
Yeah, it's true. All right, well, good stuff, guys. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Fun Turn, I think that's awesome. It's good for people to hear that too. Life is a constant part of that. I think sometimes people think we're sad because we share with you guys this kind of harder stuff, but man, we all think this stuff. I was just thinking while you're talking, I was like, people probably think we're all mopey and depressed all the time, and maybe we are sometimes because you think deep.
Yeah.
But ignorance is bliss, right? That's that saying. I don't want to be ignorant, even if it's blissful. Does that make sense? Like I don't want to. I don't want to live in this surface level stuff where I'm just trying to distract myself from reality.
Yeah, because you just, once again, it's kind of like what I was saying earlier about like how there's more. Like there's more. Like you can't ignore it. Especially if you're really following, man. It's hard to just take this hard truth, these deep facts of life and ignore them after you realize them. It's hard. It's really hard to do. I can't do it. Even if I want to, I can't because it haunts you.
It's crazy, dude. You're good stuff. All right. Well, hey, let's jump on into our questions. We got a lot for you today. Got a jam-packed show. That's serious. So, AJ.
Yes.
I'm up. I think I'll ask you first.
Okay.
Now, this person references a video. The video we don't have, but the topic is from the video, I think. So, Question is, by the way, not trying to, I hope you guys know, like, we don't typically just blow past people's lives like that, but we're just trying to share some of our lives without taking the whole show to do so. So that we're not trying to be flipping them. The guys know I love what they share, and we talk about this stuff a lot privately. So, I found this video on. Here we go. Ready? Questions. Yep. I found this video on Facebook. I want to see what you guys think of this passage. Numbers 5:11 through 31 has become the go-to Bible passage of pro-choice advocates to show that the Bible supports abortion. Mm-hmm. Now, to help you out, AJ, I pulled up the appropriate verse. Okay.
Okay.
And I think that I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's a huge section. You guys can go check it out. So it's Numbers chapter 5, verses 11 through 31. And what it essentially describes is what's called a jealous offering. Okay. Mm-hmm. And what happens is, this is Old Testament, of course. Is if back then the penalty for adultery is death.
That's right.
Kill you. I think. So the Lord told Moses about this jealousy offering, supposedly. So if a man, his wife goes astray, is unfaithful to him, sleeps with another, but is concealed from her husband, meaning lied, and she's undetected, even though she has defiled herself, since there's no witness against her and she wasn't caught in the act. And then if a feeling of jealousy comes over the husband and he becomes jealous because of his wife who has defiled herself, or if a feeling of jealousy comes over him and he becomes jealous of her though she has not defiled herself. So essentially, if he is feeling jealous and is suspecting her of cheating on him, and he believes it that strongly, this is what he should do. And it describes this thing where they go to the priest, they give this offering of 2 quarts of barley flour. It's going to sound crazy. And then the priest brings her forward. He takes some holy water, puts it, mixes it, and then he has the woman stands before the priest, lets her hair down, and places her hands in the grain, kind of watery grain. Yeah. And then and then the priest is to hold the bitter water that brings a curse, and essentially she'll drink this water. No, I'm sorry. He will tell her that essentially she needs to kind of make an oath. And he says, if you have gone astray, this is in verse 30, or it starts at verse 19, the priest will then require the woman to take an oath and will say to her, if no man has slept with you, if you have not gone astray and become defiled while under your husband's authority, be unaffected by this bitter water that brings a curse. But if you have gone astray while under your husband's authority, if you have defiled yourself, and a man other than your husband has slept with you, at this point the priest must make the woman take the oath with the sworn curse. And he is to say to her, may the Lord make you into an object of your people's cursing and swearing when he makes your thighs shrivel and your belly swell. It's interesting. May this water that brings a curse enter into your stomach, causing your belly to swell and your thigh to shrivel. And the woman must reply, amen and amen. Then the priest is to write these curses on a scroll, wash them off into the bitter water, and then he'll require the woman to drink the water. And then he is to take the grain offering of jealousy from the woman's hand, wave the offering for the Lord, and bring it to the altar. Then he'll require the woman to essentially drink that water, right? Right. When he makes her drink the water, if she's defiled herself and become unfaithful to her husband, the water then brings a curse. That brings a curse will enter her and cause bitter suffering. Her belly will swell and her thigh will shrivel. She will become a curse among her people. But if the woman has not defiled herself and is pure, she will be unaffected and will be able to conceive children. And blah, blah, blah. And essentially either way, right? If she doesn't make her sick or whatever, then she didn't do it. Now, this is going to sound crazy to us in general before we start, right?
Sure.
Because we're 21st century. And it also involves, remember, this is Moses, the guy who splitted Red Seas. God was really showing himself powerfully back then through Moses to show that he was who he said he was, right? For a purpose. So we've got to put aside our modern sensibilities that say God didn't actively move through things. So that thing does that a lot of, and I've heard this myself, that is that concoction is an abortion-causing concoction, which admits that God is okay with abortion under certain circumstances.
Yeah, I don't think that's true. I think this passage really, to me, is... I feel like the meaning behind this passage is, hey, if you are telling the truth in this, you should have no worries here. Like, people are looking into the actual act of what's happening. I think they're looking into it a little too much. And I feel like we do that a lot when we're reading the Bible. Sometimes I think we can kind of take it as that means we should go do that literal thing. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and this was a command that God did give them to do. They did this.
Right. And and I guess to me it's one of those things where it's like, okay, he commanded them to do that, and the reason why he would do it is because if she was being honest, like, it wouldn't be a big deal.
Won't happen anyway.
Right.
So even if it does, right, and where does it say that she has an abortion? Where does it say she's pregnant?
It doesn't. There's no, yeah.
It's great. I'm glad you said that. So let me tell you why people started to jump to this. It actually comes from, and I think a lot of people's opinions, a mistranslation that the NIV did.
Okay.
Okay? So I'm trying to find the NIV here version because I pulled that up. I guess I did.
Yeah, you're right. There's zero mention of this woman being pregnant. in
But
this
when you
entire
heard it,
thing.
did you think that, or just because did you notice that, or did your mind immediately assume there was because of the question itself? Does that make sense?
I think when you ask the question, what it does, if you're not careful, yeah. Like I was for a
They
minute
set
there.
you up, right?
Exactly, because I was kind of thinking, oh, maybe she's like, okay.
So this is how the NIV translates verse. Remember the part about your thigh to shrivel and your belly to swell? This is how that translates the NIV. Starting at verse 20, it says, "But if you've gone astray while married to your husband, and you have made yourself impure by having sexual relations with a man other than your husband, here the priest is to put the woman under this curse. May the Lord curse you to become a curse among your people when he makes your womb miscarry and your abdomen swell. May this water that brings a curse enter your body so that your abdomen swells or your womb miscarries." Even then, even if that translation is wrong, which I do believe, and a lot of scholars believe it's not. That's why the ESV, the first one I read was the HCSB.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Meaning HCSB, ESV, these are, they're called wooden or literal translations. It's more close to the exact kind of meaning of the...
Right.
The NIV is not a bad version of itself, but you gotta be careful with little things like this. So yeah, there's no mention in here that the woman is pregnant.
Yeah, that still doesn't imply that she's pregnant.
Correct. And that's what I was going to say. And even with that word miscarry, it says abdomen swell or your womb miscarry, right?
That's right.
So this is going to be weird.
You almost got me.
And no, I think you caught it right away. It's just so the word, when it says in the ESV, remember it says your thigh will shrivel. That's kind of weird. Your womb will swell. What is a thigh shriveling? Well, got to look into Eastern culture. A lot of times thigh, when you look at other mentions of it in the Bible, implies the loins.
I got you.
So her privates will shrivel. So when you think of a woman, right, even in our day, when they say they become, dried up, shrivel, what does that mean? What do you think of?
Can't reproduce.
Exactly, right? Menopause, even. If you dry up, if your thigh, falls away, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like the implication that you're no longer fertile, right?
Exactly.
So some people may be like, oh, so you're making them not fertile. No. Who knows what it means? It might just mean for a time even. It doesn't even necessarily say permanent. But the point is that first, that doesn't, you're reading into this. It never mentions that she's pregnant. In fact, if she's pregnant, he'd probably know, because why would he even have suspicions? He would just think it's his. Anyway, the point is, and I like what you said, because I think you said it, if she didn't, then she has nothing to worry about. Right. And a lot of the women probably would be like, I'm just going to fess up because I don't want that to happen.
Exactly.
But even if it did, there's no indication. What it really seems to imply is that there's going to, your belly, your womb's going to, you're going to have reproductive issues moving forward. It's going to curse you. Maybe this is going to sound weird. What if it's terrible, just pains?
Yeah.
Regardless, there is no indication that this is anything about abortion, okay? You're reading into it from one verse that was mistranslated.
Right.
And even in the mistranslated verse, it says, or, probably meaning, or your womb you'll miscarry, meaning like you're not going to be able to reproduce.
Yeah,
right?
man.
It doesn't mean you're already pregnant. Also, even if it was, that wouldn't support abortion because God himself is the one who's determining what's happening. Does that make sense? Not man. Does that make sense, you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just me entering the argument based on your interpretation, which I believe is a poor interpretation. Long story short, this section is just describing what happens to kind of find out. And it also protects the woman because men can get jealous sometimes for no reason, can't they?
Absolutely.
So then all of a sudden they go and do this and nothing happens. The man's not going to be able to treat her poorly.
Yes.
He's got to accept it, right?
It was a form of protection in a way. 100%.
Exactly. So I hope that answers you guys' question. Though that is my thought on that.
All right.
Our thought. So good job, AJ. I think you caught it right away.
Thanks, man. Let's see. So next question is we have Exodus here. It's Exodus 24 and 4 through 6. Question is, where did the phrase "anything you put above God is an idol"? Where'd that come from?
Okay, so that section I just pulled up here says, Do not make an idol for yourself, or whether in the shape of anything in the heavens above, or in the earth below, or in the waters under the earth. You must not bow down to them or worship them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the father's sin to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing faithful love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commands. My assumption here in your question is you're saying this just describes that idols are actual handmade things like false gods. And you're saying, well, where did we get the phrase anything you put above God is an idol?
I think he kind of describes it in the section, right? Like,
yes, but I think what they're saying is that's not
a literal.
You can't put relationships above God.
Oh, got you.
There's no image of that. It doesn't matter. The spirit behind it is anything that you put above God, that you make more important than God's commands, that you look to for identity and purpose is an idol.
That's right.
Right? And so throughout time, sometimes and that's why. So where did the phrase come from? It's also in the New Testament. It talks about this stuff too. Hold on, I'll try to find that. Does that make sense though?
Yeah, definitely.
So essentially, I feel like the question kind of sets it up that me and you who's asking the question are sort of debating. I hope that's, so I'm not trying to sound argumentative, but what I am saying is it's pretty obvious why. What are false idols? First of all, they often represented things. Pagan gods represented specific things like lust and love and marriage, right?
Right.
Zeus is thunder. So in essence, you're putting that above, but also anything that you put your life into that is above God is an idol, right? Because you're worshiping.
Oh, yeah. Definitely, man. Yeah, I feel like they were kind of coming at it. I almost took it as they were saying where did this phrase come from? Anything you put above God is an idol, as if it's not.
Yeah, so that verse proves that's not true.
Yeah, it's like they're almost trying to ask where did you come up with this exact phrasing?
Here's one from the New Testament. Colossians 3:5 tells us, "Put to death, therefore, what is earthly in you: sexual immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, and covetousness, which is idolatry."
Boom, there it is.
Yeah. 1 John 5:21, little children, keep yourself from idols. But that one, 1 Corinthians 10:14. Actually, I want to pull that up because.
Yeah. Definitely lots of scriptural evidence here of what an idol is and what they are and how you can put it above God.
Yeah, it's true. Here we go. He says in verse 6 in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, "Now, this is Paul, these things took place as examples for us, that we might not desire evil as they did. Do not be idolaters, as some of them were. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up and play. We must not indulge in sexual morality, as some of them did, and 23,000 fell in a single day. We must not put Christ to the test, as some of them did and were destroyed by serpents, nor grumble, as some of them did and were destroyed by the destroyer. Now these things happen to them as an example," blah, 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 right? Then he goes down to 14, says, "Therefore, my beloved, flee from idolatry." And the implication is, what could be idolatry? Sexual morality.
Yep.
Because you're putting it above what God told you to do.
That's right.
It could be grumbling.
Yep.
It could be anything. So I think.
I like that.
Yeah. So this is one of those times where it's really important to, to know the spirit of it.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I think sometimes it's kind of what even relating to that first question. I feel like sometimes people are looking for that exact wording to be somewhere in the Bible, or it's not true or something. It's just when it's no, man, it's there. It's just worded differently,
It's true, man. Formerly, Galatians 4:8, "Formerly, when you did not know God, you were enslaved to those that by nature are not gods." Might even be people, right?
It's good.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Makes sense to me.
So hopefully, I'm trying to find a few more. So yeah. Romans 1:23, "And they exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal men and birds and animals, creepy things." That means, on the one hand, clearly the actual false gods, but also women, men, relationships.
Yes.
You don't have to call something a god to be treating it as a god.
Exactly. That's really good. I like
Anyway, hope that helps.
Yes.
What do we got?
Now we do, if you want, we have another Exodus question right after that one. Do you want to answer that one now since we're already on Exodus?
Sure.
So it's Exodus 19:15, and it says, "Why would God tell them to not have sex?"
Actually look this up, but I'm gonna. Give me just a second.
Yeah.
because I just want to be able to read it. Oh, okay.
Do you have a question about God, life, the Bible, or anything in between? Go ahead and shoot us a question, comment, or concern at www.theremnant.life
Said that so intense.
real-talk. I'll say it one more time because I screwed it up. www.theremnant.life/real-talk. There we go.
So this will be interesting.
Okay.
I'm going to start actually at verse 9. Okay, so this is Moses when he went up to the mountain, all right? And then God says, went to the mountain, and the Lord called to him from the mountain. This is what you must say to the house of Jacob, blah, blah, blah. You've seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I carried you on wings, blah, blah. Kind of telling them what it's supposed to do.
Okay.
Moses came back down. He summoned the elders and set before them all those words that the Lord had commanded him. Then all the people responded, we will do all the Lord has spoken. So Moses brought the people's words back to the Lord. So he went back up to talk to him. Then the Lord said to Moses in verse 9, I'm going to come to you in a dense cloud so the people will hear when I speak with you and will always believe you. Then he went down and told him again. And the Lord told Moses, go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow. Listen, this is, all right. And the Lord told Moses, this is verse 10, and the Lord told Moses, go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow. They must wash their clothes and be prepared by the third day. For on the third day, the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people, put boundaries for the people all around the mountain, say, be careful that you don't go up on the mountain or touch its base. Anyone who touches the mountain will be put to death. No hand may touch him. Instead, he will be stoned or shot with arrows. No animal or man will live. When the ram's horn sounds a long blast, they may go up the mountain. So God's presence was going to come, and he says, you need to get the people to understand this, that this is a holy place. They cannot come up here.
Wow.
Because then verse 14, is that what the one we're on?
15, 1915, yep.
Then Moses came down from the mountain to the people and consecrated them, and he washed their clothes. He said to the people, who's he?
Moses.
Be prepared for the third day. Do not have sexual relations with women. Now, what do we notice right away? Do you guys notice anything? Go ahead. God didn't tell him to say that.
Yeah, Moses.
Moses said that himself.
Yeah.
So, first off, God didn't tell them to do that. That was Moses. Now, doesn't mean Moses was wrong. Why did Moses do it? Human wisdom here. He knew that I think he wanted the men to be focused, to understand what was happening, and he was trying to, hey, don't get distracted.
Yeah, that was his own.
He added that himself.
That's right. Interesting.
That's why it's important to really understand Scripture. So it doesn't mean Moses was going against God, because God didn't say he couldn't do that. He was just, hey, guys, let me put it in other words. God says, make this a holy moment. They need to understand and focus. So God comes down and goes, I've done that, right? Maybe you guys, I come in, I'm like, listen, guys, we've got Sunday service. We've got to be focused. Don't be messing around on the phone.
Yep.
Maybe. The point
Good
is,
example.
Yeah, but the point is, like, I'm going to add that. The main point, though, is, like, we got to be ready for Sunday.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not like God was like, Todd, tell them to not be on their phone.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
In this case. So, yeah, the other thing is God didn't tell them that. God just said they need to know how holy this is.
That's right.
And Moses was like, they're not going to know how holy this is.
That's right. I think that's great. That's a great example. Like, I love that.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think makes total sense. Yeah, it was just Moses speaking. It was him. It was not directly from God in that moment when he said that. So that's really cool. Heck yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, guys. I have to respond. I'm supposed to have a meeting after this, and then the show's gone long, so.
Oh, it's all good, brother. Now, I will say that it makes me wonder how often, like, in those moments, because I'm sure this has happened plenty of times in the Bible when someone was trying to say this, how often do you think people said it in a place of fear, almost like trying to catch themselves? Like,
What's that?
Like the way, so how Moses used it to say, like, he said, like, hey, do not have sex with women, and he used that as a way of like getting them prepared for the moment that was coming. I wonder if anybody in the Bible has used like a similar concept to what Moses did, but for like the bad, like they used it the wrong way. Like God told me this, but then they added this part
you
of
mean like the Pharisees.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think people do that, right?
Yeah,
I think you're right on. So, question number 2, moving forward. Was the flood referenced in Proverbs 3:20? I've got Proverbs for you. 3:20 says, by his knowledge the watery depths broke open and the clouds ripped with dew. However, just so you know, I'm going to read this a little bit more. Starts with verse 13. Happy is a man who finds wisdom, for who acquires understanding. and who acquires understanding. For she is more profitable than silver, and her revenue is better than gold, that being wisdom. She's more precious than jewels. Nothing you desire compares with her. Long life is in her right hand, and her left hand riches and honor. Her ways are pleasant. She is a tree of life to those who embrace her, and to those who hold on to her are happy. 19, the Lord founded the earth by wisdom and established the heavens by understanding. By his knowledge, the watery depths broke open and the clouds dripped with dew.
I don't think that is a reference to the flood. No.
Yeah. So why?
I think it's just saying like that's the power. Like that's his power.
Boom. He set the oceans and the earth. Yeah, I
Yes.
agree completely.
Like if anything, they're saying look at how powerful your God is.
Yeah.
And by his knowledge, he's able to do those things.
He created the
Yes.
water, he's like the oceans and all that.
If anything, it's going. Why don't you listen to this to God?
This God. But I think it's cool that when you ask this question, that your mind then also went to this same God made the world flood. Like that's still the same thought.
Yeah.
But yeah, that specific verse is not referencing. I agree with AJ. I think it's by the I cannot speak. Proverbs are a very specific type of literature, and it is. He's making an analogy to point and a symbol and an example to point out how powerful God is.
Oh yeah.
Right? It's kind of like when we say, I always say like God can spin the sun on his fingertips, right? Like that's how
Oh,
big
yeah.
he is. Good stuff.
We actually have another Exodus question.
Cool.
So it's what's the difference between the holy place and the most holy place mentioned in Exodus 26:31? And they said they actually mentioned the version they're reading. They were reading CEV, the Common English Version.
Okay, give me just a second to pull some of those up.
Yep.
Exodus 26.
The holy place
Which
and the
describes
most holy
the
place.
building of the tabernacle. Okay. Going down to what? 31.
26:31. Yep.
You are to make a curtain of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and finely spun linen with a design of cherubim worked into it. Hanging on the four. So that was all. Okay, they really want to go down. Hang the curtain. 33. Hang the curtain under the clasp and bring the ark of the testimony behind the curtain. So the curtain will make a separation for you between the holy place and the most holy place. So specifically,
Kind of like the temple, so it feels
correct.
like.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you right now, the Holy of Holies, and that's why the ark went in there, which the tablets of Moses and all that stuff went in there. Why did that happen? That is where the presence of God was. So that is the Holy of Holies. Not everyone could even go there.
That's right.
So
So essentially,
it had to do with who could go where,
yeah.
and in the actual building of the tabernacle and the temple later on.
Yeah.
So the holy place is actually the section in the place where the priests would do the rituals and the sacrifice. Does that make sense?
Yep.
To honor God, and then the inner place is where God's presence was.
That's right. Which is, in their question, that's the most holy place, right? Yeah.
Correct.
That's
which
where
is the Holy of Holies,
Yeah.
often translated. Yeah. So hopefully, holy in and of itself, in case everyone knows, we all know what it means intrinsically, but it means set apart, different. It's special, right?
Yep.
Consecrated. So God must be separated from us, and I'm trying to think of a way to say it. The whole tabernacle is holy. We know the temple, right? It was considered holy.
Yeah.
And then the holy places, there were 3 articles of furniture. You had the lampstand, had to be lit all the time. There was the table for the presence of bread. New bread would be made. What was the third thing? Oh, yeah, and incense. So the holy place was set apart because it was a special representation, a reminder of the presence of God. So it's sort of a reminder
Yeah.
of what we're doing. And then the smaller chamber would be where the Ark of the Covenant was. And then a special area called the mercy seat. And that was where supposedly the throne of God was.
That's
so it's like you're
terrifying.
getting more and more consecrated as you get.
That's insane.
Yeah, so that's where-
a terrifying image in my head.
Yeah, and it would be, right? The idea of tying a rope to him, in case if you're not ready, you die in the presence of God. That's why, he is set apart. And it's kind of funny that they're bringing this up because in Exodus 19, that's the beginning of God trying to get them to understand, I am different than you. You are not, you cannot come where I am. It's good stuff. Good question.
Yeah, absolutely. It's wild. Let's see. Looks like that's all the Exodus I have.
Alrighty, so that brings me to thoughts on an article.
Okay.
The article is, make sure it's always what it's called, but Trump is tearing apart the evangelical church. Mm-hmm. Go all the way back here. Yep, that's what it's called. The article is from The Atlantic, and it's the evangelical church is breaking apart. I'm sorry, that's what it's called. The evangelical church is breaking apart.
Yep.
It does talk about that. The author is a guy named Peter Weiner.
Yep.
He's a contributing writer at The Atlantic and a senior fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center. He writes widely on political, cultural, religious, and national security issues, and he's the author of the book, The Death of Politics, How to Heal Our Frayed Republic After Trump. It's important to note just because he has he has a viewpoint. So
Right.
we went ahead and actually, this is something we did read ahead of time because this is a long article, guys. It is very interesting. Maybe we'll try to put the link if they want.
Oh, absolutely.
We'll try to do that in the show notes and such. But so that's it. AJ, what are your thoughts on this article?
It's interesting.
The article itself, again, is not technically called Trump is Tearing It Apart. It is called, I want to make that clear so everyone hears. It is called, for some reason, though, at the top of it, it says that from The Atlantic. That's what they call it internally, maybe? That's weird. The actual article is called The Evangelical Church is Breaking Apart.
Right. And then all of a sudden,
But yet, when you print it, it says Trump is tearing apart the evangelical church. Anyway, so the evangelical church is breaking apart.
Yes. So my thoughts on this is it was kind of a roller coaster because there was moments where there were some really good points made.
I agree.
And some of the points made were by different pastors that this guy had interviewed. But then there was also some people he interviewed that were just absolute. I was like, oh, that's ridiculous. So it was definitely. I felt like the guy who wrote this, he was definitely a little skewed. I think as far as like where he was leaning towards, which again you said is fine. Like everyone has their own opinion.
Sure.
I kind of felt like he was willing to still put some truth in there from some of the more conservative people that he had interviewed. So that was cool. But
yeah, and before you go into it, I'll just give people an idea of the thoughts of it, and then I'll let you read what you are. So give sort of its thesis statement here. He would say a couple of statements that kind of wrap up his thoughts on it, or give an overview. Would say that, quote, nearly everyone tells me there's at least a small group in every church, a pastor and prominent figure supposedly within the evangelical world who would only speak anonymously. Told him nearly everyone tells me there's at least a small group in nearly every evangelical church complaining and agitating against teaching or policies that aren't sufficiently conservative or anti-woke. A pastor and prominent figure within the evangelical world told the author. Like others with whom I spoke about this topic, he requested anonymity, wanted to be anonymous, in order to speak candidly. It's everywhere. Blah, blah, blah. He says, so this author, what is his name? I just told you.
Peter
Weiner says, the aggressive, disruptive, and unforgiving mindset that characterizes so much of our politics has found a home in many American churches. And then he goes on to kind of describe that. He says, when the Christian faith is politicized, churches become repositories not of grace, but of grievances, places where tribal identities are reinforced, where fears are nurtured, and where aggression and nastiness are sacralized. The result is not only wounding the nation, it's having a devastating impact on the Christian faith.
Yes.
Anyway, go ahead.
So it was interesting because just kind of reading through, I kind of highlighted a couple of things here and there. Like one of them, for example, was he was interviewing a pastor. In a matter of 4 months, there was several pastors who resigned from a Bethlehem Baptist church, which was a flagship church in Minneapolis. And one of them, his name was Brian. And he cited mistreatment by elders, domineering leadership, bullying, and spiritual abuse in a toxic culture. And it was interesting because it sounded like I feel like the underlying theme of this whole thing is they're making it political. Like they're talking about the reason why there was domineering leadership, bullying, and spiritual abuse and toxic culture. He kind of relates it to political conflicts. Because it's literally right after that. It says political conflicts are hardly the whole reason for the turmoil, but according to news accounts, they played a significant role, particularly on matters having to do with race. So they kind of took some what we would call hot button topics, smashed them together, and said this is the reason why evangelical churches are kind of imploding. And I don't know, man. I disagree on a lot of it. I'm trying to find some more stuff here.
Yeah, man. Take your time.
Let's see. So it says, like, for example, here it says many Christians have embraced the worst aspects of our culture and our politics. And it says when the Christian faith is politicized, churches become repositories not of grace but of grievances, places where tribal identities are reinforced, where fears are nurtured, and where aggression and nastiness are sacralized. The result is not only wounding the nation, it's having a devastating impact on the Christian faith. So it's like, a lot of people, in my opinion, they want to take the truth of the Bible, and if it makes them uncomfortable, they want to say, well, that's wrong. And therefore, they're going to make it political, and that's when they're going to talk about how there's, aggression and nastiness and whatnot because you're standing up for what's true. And they're essentially saying, well, that's what's driving people. That's what's imploding the evangelical church. And it's like, I don't know. So, for example, it says, here it says, the idea within the religious right that certain political positions were deeply Christian. So they're already, again, they're categorizing, the right, the political right as deeply Christian. Like, it's just kind of slated to make the right look a certain way. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I think
because then they're saying because we're right and they're deeply Christian, well, those Christian values are the wrong.
Well, I actually think he's saying, I agree with you. I think what he's saying, though, he is saying, he's kind of agreeing with you, but I think you're coming at it from a different way. So what he's saying there is, he believes that the problems are, this author, that is the idea that the religious right is naturally deeply Christian, which essentially he's implying that isn't the case. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay.
So we're getting a problem because people think certain political parties are more Christian than others. And he says that's a problem. Now, where I am, and I think I don't think that's necessarily a problem. When given the choice between two rotten apples, I'm still going to take the apple that is less gross than the other apple.
Yeah.
And there's certain things, man, that, I don't know. So I agree with you that's an issue. But I think he is saying that's part of it. But he says that's a problem. Like,
right.
That's causing the problems because, for instance, let's say the religious, or let's say Republicans, okay? They're not Christians, right? That is not a Christian party. There is no Christian party, which is true in and of itself, but...
Right. Let's see. And, he kind of goes on to... he gives some quotes from some other people that he was interviewing. Let's see here. There was... a guy named James Ernest. He's the vice president and editor-in-chief at Erdman's, the publisher of religious books. It says, Ernest was one of the several figures I spoke with who pointed to, I'm going to probably not say this right, but it's catechism. I don't know. Catechism. The process of instructing and informing people through teaching as a source of the problem. So he says, the evangelical church in the U.S. over the last 5 decades has failed to form its adherents into disciples. So there is great hollowness. All that was needed to cause the implosion that we've seen was sufficiently provocative stimulus, and that stimulus has come. So I thought that was an interesting point because I was like, okay, that makes sense. Like, we're not the leaders in the church are not willing to develop disciples because in order to do that, you have to tell them uncomfortable truth. So I thought that was a cool point in the article. Like, I thought that was cool. Let's see here. They did mention. So then Alan Jacobs, another guy, he's a distinguished professor of humanities in the honors program at Baylor University. He talks about the current political culture of multiple technologies and platforms. He was saying, television, radio, social media, podcasts, can constantly feed that agenda. So I thought that was cool that they brought that into play.
Yeah, I feel like the overall point of what he's saying, and I think you're kind of touching it. Listen, there's some mixes here. So let me give them to continue as you're pointing this out. His point is, in this article, is politics people have begun to align themselves in Christianity. They have blurred the line between politics and our faith.
Yes.
Which I would agree with. And he makes some really good points. For instance, he says, due to what's been happening in this country the last 2 years, for instance, in this quote alone, he says, the coronavirus pandemic of course, has placed religious communities under extraordinary strain. For many Christians, it's been a bar, meaning it's barring them from gathering and worshiping together, sharing communion and performing baptisms and saying common prayers and participating in rituals and liturgy. Not being in community destabilized what has long been a core sense of Christian identity. Then he goes on to say, but there's more to the fractures than just COVID-19. And that's where he goes on to say, essentially, the statement that Christians have become, his main point is Donald Trump has become synonymous with Christianity, and that is bad, okay? So he goes on to say, historian George Marsden told me that political loyalties can sometimes be so strong that they create a religious-like faith that overrides or transforms a more traditional religious faith. I agree with that. We can let our social and political backgrounds and ideologies become more important than Christ.
Yes.
Now, where I struggle in this article is the idea where it's a very well-written article, but he seems to only be pointing to that being negative in the sense of Donald Trump or very, quote, conservative values. In fact, he goes on later, because he says the first step, you brought this up, was the cultivation of the idea within the religious right that certain political positions were deeply Christian. So what does he say the first step in making a political loyalty with a religious-like faith that overrides or transforms traditional faith? The first step is to create the idea that the religious right is deeply Christian. And then he said, then came Donald Trump.
Right.
And he goes on to say, when Trump was able to, quote, when Trump was, he interviews this guy named Marsden. He says, quote, when Trump was able to add open hatred and resentments to the political, religious stance of, quote, true believers, it crossed the line, Marsden, the historian, said. Tribal instincts seem to have become overwhelming. The dominance of political religion or professed religion is seen in how, for many, the loyalty to Trump became a blind allegiance. The result is that many Christian followers of Trump have come to see a gospel of hatreds, resentments, vilifications, put-downs, and insults as expression of the Christianity for which they too should be willing to fight. He goes on to say, to quote Tim Schultz, the president of First Amendment Partnership, advocate for religious freedom, he said, evangelicism was due a reckoning. It's been held together by political orientation and sociology more than common theology. I would agree with that. So he's saying evangelical Christianity in this country has actually been held together more by political views and social views than it ever has by the Bible.
Right.
Which we agree with.
Yes.
And he says the twin crises of the summer of 2020, COVID and a heightened awareness of enduring racial injustice, think George Floyd, exposed this long unnoticed truth. Now, you brought this up before we started the show, and this is true. In 2020, we said in the show during the pandemic, we all remember that this was we didn't know how much.
Yeah, this is just.
But the pandemic was gonna show the cracks within the walls of Christianity.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I would go farther on though. I would say
Society,
even when people were stealing diapers and
Right.
formula and toilet paper for themselves. Okay, so. And you brought up, he says, what the reason that this can happen is because there's a massive discipleship failure.
Yes.
Caused by catechist failure, meaning they're not teaching them essentially from the Bible. We're not teaching how to be a disciple.
Exactly.
And then he said the process of instructing and forming people through teaching. He says that's the problem. He says that the fact is the evangelical church in the U.S. over the last 5 decades has failed to form its adherents, meaning its followers, into disciples. Meaning the problem has happened that over the last 50 years, churches are they're filled with people who are not being taught to be disciples of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's right.
Which we both would, I think everybody would agree with.
Oh yeah.
And then he goes on and says, in the absence of the church teaching people how to be disciples, this is my own words, but this is what he says. He says, the culture has begun to make them disciples of itself. We say this all the time, right? Real talk exists because we said you deserve to have answers to your questions because in the silence of the church, someone's going to answer.
That's right.
Agree with this completely. Okay, so far we're on the same side. And then he goes on to say many churches aren't interested in making disciples at all. They focus instead on entertainment.
Yep.
Because entertainment is what keeps people in the seats and coins in the offering plate. We agree with that too.
Oh yeah.
And then he goes on to say even pastors who are committed to doing this, they only get an average of an hour a week to teach people.
That's right.
Sermons are short. Very few churchgoers attend adult education classes. Even fewer attend Bible studies in small groups. We've seen that even with our church, and I feel like we're radical. No one comes to our foundations theology class. If you're a remnant folk listening to this, you don't come to that.
Yep.
You don't sign up for Bible studies. So then he goes on to say, this guy named Jacob says, so if people are getting one kind of teaching for half an hour per week and another for dozens of hours per week, meaning by the culture, which one do you think will win?
That's right. It's going to be the news. Right?
And if we're not teaching people to be disciples, then we're also not teaching them to read the Bible.
That's right.
Yeah, an hour wouldn't be enough anyway. But if they're not reading Scripture and learning, if they're not living as a disciple the rest of the week, well, of course they're gonna be shaped by
That's
culture.
Right. He even says it's a pretty radical comparison, but it stuck out to me was he says the churches have barely better than a snowball's chance of hell in shaping most people's lives.
Exactly, because he's saying there's just not enough time.
That's right.
He says people come to believe that what they're most thoroughly and intensively taught to believe, and that teaching comes not from the churches, but from the media they consume, or rather, the media that consumes them. Yeah.
Yep.
Now, he says here, too, though, he goes, this is not a problem limited to the faithful on one side of the aisle. This is true of both the Christian left and Christian right. This is where I have a problem, and I've always said this. There is no Christian left and right.
No.
There is Christianity.
That's right.
Okay, and that's a fact. You either follow Christ or you don't.
Yep.
So I'm already disagreeing a little. It's this idea that you can be a Christian, but there is following Christ. Now, there's gray areas.
Yes.
That we have to just trust and walk in faith, but quit acting like that. You're politicizing it right then and there. When you say there's a Christian left and right.
Yep. You're already.
That's my problem with this article. This article he makes this really good point about in America, politics have trumped the Bible.
Right.
I would agree, but he only speaks negatively of, let's just be real, the Republican side of Christianity. How do I know that? Well, he goes on. He says, sorry, I'm trying to. Well, he goes on to make a lot of good comments. He says, I want to finish up real quick before I go into that. He says, many people are more committed to their politics than what the Bible says. We would agree. We have failed not only to teach people the whole of Scripture, but also failed to help them think biblically. We have failed to teach them that sometimes Scripture is most useful. Oh, gosh, I don't agree with that statement. When it doesn't say what we want it to say, because then it's correcting us. Actually, I do agree with that. Sorry, I thought I was saying something else.
Yeah.
So he's saying the Bible is most transforming when we have to deal with the parts that we don't like, because it changes us.
Exactly.
So here's the thing. Now he then goes on to say this. I feel under assault sometimes too, says this teacher. I feel under assault sometimes too. However, I also know that the early Christians transformed the Roman Empire not by demanding, but by loving, not by angrily shouting about the rights in the public square, but by serving even the people who persecuted them.
Yes.
Which is why Christianity grew so quickly and took over the empire. Now that's true. Yep. And he ends it with saying we have forgotten the cross. I agree with that. That's beautiful. But, and I've always said that, we've talked about, why would we go into the square and, shout against homosexuals and say, that's so stupid. Then he says, this guy said, how many people look at churches in America this day and see the face of Jesus? I agree. Then he goes on to essentially talk about Trump. But then we start going, then you're going to start seeing the slant of this article.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep, this is where...
He ends up quoting this woman named Kristen Cobes Dumays. I'm sorry, Miss Dumays, if I said it wrong. She's a history professor at Calvin University and the author of the book Jesus and John Wayne, How White Evangelicals Corrupted a Faith and Fractured a Nation. Stop. We're sitting here saying that happened, and yet you're calling it white evangelicals. You're creating the division that you're railing against.
Yeah, you're saying,
or you're at least adding to
look
it.
At the media, but you're doing it yourself.
Yeah. It's annoying. And he says that Trump blah, blah, blah. This lady essentially says that American evangelicals have worked for decades to replace the Jesus of the Gospels with an idol of rugged masculinity and Christian nationalism. Now, some of that I can agree with. There's a lot of Christians that believe that America is God's place. And you've heard me say, America could cease existing today. There's nothing in the Bible says America is going to last till the end of time.
Nope.
But then he goes on to say that, this lady goes on to say it's important to recognize that rugged warrior Jesus is not the only Jesus, blah, blah.
Yep.
It's just funny, man. So this is a huge article, and that's why we're kind of all over. And there's some good points. The idea that, putting men and women against each other and on and on and on, right? I think She says, men who embrace a kinder, gentler version of masculinity may tip into a more rugged, ruthless version when they deem the situation sufficiently. So here she goes with men again. Sufficiently dire. For more than half a century, she said, evangelical leaders have found reason to deem the situation dire. They rallied their congregations against the threats of communism, secular humanism, feminism, gay rights, radical Islam, Democrats in the White House, Democratic decline, and critical race theory.
Yep.
When you put all those together, some of those are ridiculous, but some of them we should stand against. Not by
100%.
necessarily railing, right? But by saying there's truth. And I think that's what you were saying earlier.
Yes.
So, yeah, I don't know. What's your overall view, I guess, of this article?
I think it had some good information in it, but overall, I think it's like you said, it's still feeding the fire because you're still stoking division within your own article.
Completely agree. And I think that this author, Peter, has done a great job of pointing out something that is true, that the church is in a weird place.
100%.
But I would say it's just as dangerous to have the woke, I'm using their terminology, and the woke ideology, which is also against the Bible.
Yes.
Okay? Which puts humans' comfort and desire above the will of God. And that's not true. You can speak truth or you can speak love and mercy and grace and also the truth, because when we teach a gospel that does not involve the death of something of us, of our desires over Christ, that's not the gospel. That's not Jesus. So, and you can see in a lot of ways, they quote this pastor who's complaining and says, 29% of pastors are quitting. And I believe it. It's hard right now.
That was sad.
But he goes right here. Even this pastor says, a ton of pastors are quitting. And he says, most pastors hate conflict. So if you're going to pay me 1/4 of what I can make on the market, why put up with this? And
that's unbelievable.
Faith in God, man. That's why you do it. You don't do it for that reason.
Yeah, man, that was really sad to read.
Yeah.
When I heard that.
So I think this guy, and this is happening. I think it's more popular than. He ends it with this, and I wrote this. So I like the idea of we need to find Jesus. We need to not put politics above our faith. I love that. I think that's right. I think this guy's wrong in the fact that he's not saying what he really thinks. And I think the top of this article is what he really probably called it. Trump is tearing apart the evangelical church. No. Politics and media are tearing apart this church by making us not even making us, sadly. We are putting those identities above Christ in the Bible. I also love the fact that he pointed out that we are not making disciples. And because of that, they're getting swept up in these things. But it's not just Trumpism, which could happen, like is sometimes true. There are people that follow Trump and worship him more than Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
But there are also people over here in the woke club who are saying anything that offends people is wrong, and that isn't true. Jesus absolutely was love and mercy and grace, but he was also the one that looked at someone and said, "You brood of vipers," and talked about those things. So
that's right.
This is what I would say. I ended it with this. This was his closing statement. He said, "Something has gone amiss. Pastors know it as well as anyone and better than most. The Jesus of the Gospels, the Jesus who won their hearts and who long ago won mine, needs to be reclaimed." And I put this: Jesus isn't passive. We don't need to reclaim him. You understand what I'm saying? I don't like that concept. It's still putting us at the center.
Yep.
So I think there's a lot of good things in here. I think it's slanted, like AJ said.
Oh, yeah.
I think that, we need to understand that that's absolutely happening, but both sides are to blame and both extremes are bad. Okay? Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
And it's not wrong to stand firm on truth, even if it offends people, and it will offend people. Jesus said, "You think I came to bring peace? I came to bring the sword. I will turn mother against son, father against husband, wife. On and on and on."
That's right.
I didn't mean to ramble. That's a big article.
Good, man. It is, and I thought it was a cool article that was picked.
Was there any other things you thought that I didn't kind of cover there? And I loved the thoughts you had.
I think, to me, it was just sad. Like you brought up, just they interviewed a lot of different pastors, and a lot of them, just their ideas just kind of made me sad. Like the idea of Southernization,
I saw that too.
That was what, and how the guy they interviewed for it said how the idea of Southernization in the evangelical church, and how that's essentially they just brought in racism to the evangelical church because of how Southern culture is. I was like, what are you talking about, man? But so that was just sad. And then seeing, you mentioned, the guy who talked about how if I can get paid much more to deal with this. Why would I stay? Like, that was just sad. Now, one guy that I did see that, and I can't remember, I think this was a different guy, but they talked about during the interview how he was welling up in tears because he had spent so much of his life trying to build this culture of Jesus, and and how it was just getting ripped apart. And like that one made me really sad because that sounded like a guy. He even said like, if I remember, he even said one of his quotes was like, "I just pray to Jesus that I stay."
I did. I thought that was beautiful.
And I was like, dang, man, that guy, he's living it out. Like, he's not the guy who's talking about money and how pay me more and I can deal with this. Like, that guy shouldn't be a pastor, in my opinion, if that's all you're doing it for. Yeah. But like, that guy who's sitting there welling up with tears trying to say, I hope I have the strength to keep going. Like, that's a guy who that guy deserves to be in ministry because he sees the heart behind it all.
It's good stuff, man. I love it. Great article. Let us know your thoughts on it. Again, we'll try to put that in there. It's an interesting article regardless. I agree with a lot of it, and I just don't agree with the overall reasoning why. I think that's all we got. We got a ton of other stuff. We really need to put out that bonus episode. We got a question on here I really want to get to about this specific church that sponsors the show, The Remnant, and their view of marriage. Yeah. I'd love to talk about that. I just think for today we've probably ran out of time. But we'll get to that. Maybe we'll film it later anyway. You have any thoughts, AJ?
Just great episode. A lot of information. I hope you guys get something out of it. If you guys are watching from Facebook, make sure you like, share, comment. If you're watching from YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the notification bell. And if you're watching from Rumble, go ahead and give us a Rumble. That's it.
Fun turn?
If you're on the podcast, we greatly appreciate you leaving us a review, a 5-star review. Leave a little blurb down there. You can even say that you like PB&J sandwiches or Reese cups or whatever you like. We like peanut butter and jelly and Reese cups. Please just leave a blurb. It doesn't even have to be something good about the show. But if there is something good about the show, we will appreciate the encouragement. Now, if you don't have anything nice to say, do what your mama said. Keep it to yourself. We'd love to have you. And if you want to sit down and have a discussion and disagree with us, that's what the link's for. Again, go to that link, drop your questions. Maybe we will have a little bit of a discussion. We'll get it. We'll do it. I know Todd's willing, but please don't leave us a 1-star review. Have a great day. It's been great talking with you guys.
Yeah, I love you too, man. Thanks so much, guys. Sorry for blasting through that super fast, just trying to get it all in and not go for 3 hours. So we love you guys. Hope you have a great day, and like, share, all those beautiful things. Have a great day. God bless you.